Atul Subhash suicide, sociological analysis. What could be the subject of sociological analysis in the case of Atul Subhash suicide case? An intersection of family dynamics, gendered expectations, systemic issues with Indian society. One of the important components is
खत्म कर लेना बेस्ट है मेरे लिए, क्योंकि जो मैं पैसे कमा रहा हूँ उसी से मैं अपने दुश्मन को बलवान बना रहा हूँ। वही पैसे मुझे ही बर्बाद करने के लिए यूज है और ये साइकिल बढ़ता ही रहेगा, है ना। मेरे ही टैक्सेस के पैसे से ये कोर्ट, ये पुलिस सिस्टम मुझे और मेरी फैमिली को और बाकी लोगों को भी हैरास करेगा, जो अच्छे लोग।
One of the important components is traditional expectations. When we talk about traditional expectations, like, men is supposed to be the breadwinner of the family and is supposed to provide to the family. And when these expectations and these possibilities are not exactly met by the men, it becomes very difficult for him, and he can be subject to, and false allegations can also be initiated against him by the very family members of his wife, and especially by his wife. So that is one of the traditional expectations. When the man fails to meet those expectations, it becomes very difficult for men to sort of stand on the ground. There is another component: women's rights versus misuse of those rights. We've come across a lot of situations when a lot of hearings and evidences and happenings when we've seen women's rights, one component, and the misuse of those protective laws, like especially 498A is being misused widely, and there are different reasons at the back of this. This whole lot of narration can happen because it's like something most of the times I would say draconian law, and a law and a kind of instrument which is sponsored by the state itself to cause legal terrorism. It's a mechanism which is known as legal terrorism, and at the same time sponsored by the state itself. Misuse of 498A, and there is a whole lot of totality to be understood here, because it doesn't just happen in vacuum, or it is not coincidental. It's not an accident that's been happening over and over again and again, because it's a money fetching law. Whereas in this misuse of 498A and protective laws in order to defend women, when they are misused, it becomes very difficult, because this is something, a platform and a possibility and a kind of ambience when an accused is converted as a plaintiff or a complainant, and the person who is supposed to be complainant or plaintiff is converted as an accused, and he's not, the husband and his family is not just portrayed as an accused on legal grounds, whereas like in a court of law or before legal proceedings, or in some women commissions and some other commissions, or before the police, but the husband and his family is portrayed as accused even before the entire society in totality. If I'm talking about an accused is converted as a plaintiff or complainant, and a complainant or plaintiff is converted as an accused. So the change is to be, sociologically want to look at, the change is asking for gender neutral framework. Gender neutral legal framework is to be shot for. Another component in this sociological analysis could be mental health and stigma. The mental health of husband and his family members undergo a lot of pressure, as happened in the case of Atul Subhash. The mental pressure was too much. That is the reason he took this extreme step, choosing suicide for taking his life, killing his own life. So there is also a mechanism known as lack of support system, because in his suicide notes, 24 pages suicide notes, it seems like there was no support system, which was lacking in this Atul Subhash. Social isolation is also one of the reasons, because the person who is portrayed as an accused, whereas he's supposed to be a complainant or plaintiff, is portrayed as an accused, he and his family members, they suffer social isolation because you just cannot jail around with people, and the isolation automatically happens because once you are charged, it may be a fabricated 498 a case against you, but you feel isolation because you cannot open up, you cannot discuss your challenges, your mental pressure, what you're feeling internally and what's happening externally, because there's a lot of stigma. That is the reason you feel isolated once you fabricated on this 498A and women protective laws. It becomes very difficult. Family marriage and dynamics. Well, the reason happens breakdown of trust in families. Toxic dynamics happen to be cropping up and surfacing, whereas like financial and emotional toxins would also be sort of coming in. And one component is breakdown of trust. We've already talked. And children are used as pawns. Children are used as pawns in where marriage disputes have been going on, and it becomes very difficult for emotional purposes, for mental purposes. They are used as pawns. As happened in the case of Atul Subhash. You can figure out that 24 pages suicide note. It's very much important to look at this note also, because where Atul seemed lamenting for his child. Legal and structural issues are to be considered here. Misuse of legal provisions is very, very important here, because what happens when 498A case is booked against you, immediately police would do what automatic arrest used to happen. Now Modi ji has taken his government has taken some constructive provisions and actions in order to combat, in order to sort of put down this draconian law, so that it is used but not misused. Automatic arrest would happen. It's going to give immense amount of power in the hands of those corrupt police officials, and they will just extra use that power, misuse that power against the husband and his family members, and torture them and pester them, petrify them in order to get money out. And there also seems to be systemic iniquities, whereas it seems like the note also seems, whereas like sort of accusing the judge not behaving properly and not hearing properly Atul Subhash in this case, seems like the failure of the justice, also failure of the judicial system itself in securing proper and true justice, not being biased. Misuse of legal provisions is a lot. I mean, it's a great deal to be understood in this Atul Subhash case, as well as previous fabricated and fake cases against husband and his family members. What actually happens, it is draconian law. It is legal sponsored terrorism scheme against husband and his family members, but at the same time it's an economic activity. I would say it's an economic tool which is being used by those corrupt officials, and at the same time local politicians are also part of it. Some so-called social workers, even the judiciary, sometimes the proceedings or the advocacy part, or the judges, they also become part of it in order to get a huge chunk, a massive amount of money, because by petrifying husband and his family member, you can blackmail husband and his family and get the huge amount of money. That is the reason police spends no time registering a complaint when it comes for registering and sort of noting down their complaints on 498A, because it's very difficult. They can blackmail, they can put a lot of pressure in your mind, mentally give you and petrify you literally to get the money out of it. And the money can be anything. They'll ask you like beyond reasonable doubts, they'll ask you all stupid amounts. And this is there in the practice. Even National Crime Bureau report researchers, academics, as well as practical and empirical researchers, Honorable Supreme Court of India, and many honorable state courts, many honorable high courts of different states have expressed their concern on the misuse of this draconian law, which happened, and the same happened in the case of Atul Subhash. The thing is, like, cultural and social movement is also very important. Men Too movement is required, as like there is a global movement, Me Too. So Men Too movement is also very much required, and it is to be it is experienced once again in the case of Atul Subhash suicide. Changing perspectives are also very, very important. I think now globally, not exactly, but in Indian context, the perceptions are being changed because now we are looking for a balanced approach. We are looking for an equal approach. Whereas in conclusion, I would like to say that Atul Subha's case is not merely a personal tragedy, but a mirror reflecting societal issues, like the misuse of protective laws, stigma, and the evolving dynamics of gender and family. It calls for a structural reform, mental health awareness, and a more nuanced societal approach to family and gender control. So what I just want to tell you that this is a draconian law in Atul Subha's case. It's not just a suicide, it is not just a number, it is not just a complaint. These allegations should be studied systematically and academically as well, and research also has to be done quite a lot on this part. I'm not talking just academic. I want to touch that emotion. I want to, really express that bitterness which has been existing in this case, because it's not just a case, it's not just a number, it's not just a tragedy or a mishappening because the person has committed suicide. His life has been lost forever. What about the pain of his mother? What about the pain and sorrow of his father, his family members? And what about the failure of the judicial system or the justice system, which we've been practicing? Proper and legal actions should be initiated against those accused who are responsible for Subhash's suicide. Be it judicial system, judicial officials, or police officials, legal officials, or the society itself, and wife and her family members, they should also be penalized properly. I once said this is a draconian law and it's being more misused and less used, and those who are really victims of dowry practices, they don't get any benefit out of it. Most of the times it's only those people who are running nexus and rackets how to get money, and police is a part of it, politicians are a part of it, local politicians, filthy faces are part of it, and even legal practitioners are part of it, and society and some so-called social workers, especially those so-called wives and her family members, become part of it, becomes a whole lot of a network. And one of the things that he got married online through online portal. So this online portal has to be checked. Most of the times the online portals used and platforms used to get married, most of the times they're fake. Their entire intention is to get money. It may be before marriage, and most of the times the blackmailing happens before marriage and they get the money, and sometimes soon after the marriage and little after the marriage. But that blackmailing happens, their entire intention is to get money by misusing 498A section. And my humblest request to Honorable Prime Minister and the present government is to shackle and chain this draconian law, and those who are found accused trapping people, innocent husband and his family members, they should be behind the bars. Whether legal practitioners, judges, police authorities who are just spending no time writing those complaints because they know once they write it, there is a blackmailing possibility and mental trauma they can engineer and create and get the money out of it in the entire nexus. This is the sociological analysis I've just put forward of Atul Subhash's suicide case. And when we've talked about the intersection of family dynamics, gendered expectations, we've talked about and systemic issues with any society. And it's not just a kind of, narrative that I want to put forward. I can feel that pain. I can feel that trauma, what Atul, because most times it's embarrassing and standing those courts and facing those judicial proceedings. And it's traumatic, it's a trauma, it's pain, it's suffering, it's fear, it's a kind of, feeling hopelessness. And I would request the present government and especially present Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, please take necessary action. In this case also, my humblest request that those who are responsible for this Atul suicide, they should be behind the bars. The strongest actions should be taken against all those people, whether they are judicial officers, police officers, politicians, social workers, his wife and her family members. They should be behind the bars. That is what my intention. Thanks a lot for listening, watching. This is Dr. Surendra Kumar speaking. Watching RESO.